Hi, this is Érika from Small Robot Studio. Today I'm joined by Michael.
Hey, hello everyone. You should know me already from the channel, but if you don't, I'm the other person that makes videos.
Well, today's video is slightly different. Instead of showing you how to do something, I'm gonna show you the whole process for creating this David Bowie sculpt, and we're gonna talk about it.
Yep, and we're going to talk about the whole process and all the software that you use, and just some general critiques, I guess, overall, and things that can go better, I suppose.
That's right. Alright, so this project started a couple months ago in a live stream, so this is why this sculpt is not from zero. Where the point where I started was as far as I got in like a 2-hour session, and from that I started refining. Something about this is that I didn't really do much of character design. I did a couple quick sketches, and then I figured I will find the design, find the stylization while I'm sculpting, which was not necessarily the best idea because it took me a long time to get there.
Yeah, more of the things that you solve in the pre-production, like designy, concepty, arty stage, the better you're going to be in the sculpting stage. I mean, there are plenty of people that can go straight into sculpting, and Érika is one of those people. Sometimes just depends on the subject really and how experienced you are with it. Ultimately though, it's always easier if you've got something to look at and reference, even if it's just a very simple drawing. I find that helps me as well when I'm sculpting.
I had a lot of references. I took all my references from the video I'm Afraid of Americans, so I knew exactly the age that I was going for. It was mostly the stylization because I was not going for realistic.
And yeah, so you can see in terms of like your style, were you sort of looking at any other artists in terms of where you want to touch on in terms of style, or is this a style that you've been developing?
The main artist that I always look for is Gabriel Suarez, who is amazing for faces, just characters, I guess, in general, and Darren E. Marshall, who did a lot of the designs for the Clone Wars and Star Wars.
The Clone Wars 3D animated series from the
3D animation.
Mid-2000s, I guess you'd call that?
Somewhere around there.
I think it started in 2009 or something like that. The movie was in 2008. Yeah, Darren E. Marshall has a really, really good website, and he's got all the maquettes for the kids that he designed, the actual traditionally sculpted maquettes, which is awesome to look at. So
those are not digital; those are made with clay, and he's got photos from several points of view. It's not only just the front or the side; like he actually posted 360 pretty much.
Which is awesome if you're wanting to do studies. I did a really bad sculpt study of the Kanduku, which that design's so cool. It's so graphic and cylindrical. So yeah, really recommend checking Darren E. Marshall out. He's one of my favorites. I imagine actually Gabriel Suarez probably likes him a bit as well because there's a bit of overlap in their styles.
Yeah, I can see that. Very graphic, very sharp edges, which I really enjoy. You will see that often I'm using the pinch tool or the flatten tool to get like these sharp planes instead of like round, barely visible. I also picked a Bowie that was like not super young but not very old. I wanted to have visible wrinkles, somewhat age face. I thought that was more interesting. I think that a lot of people just want to sculpt pretty people with like features that just blend nicely, and I find more interesting to have, I don't know, a statement.
A bit of bone structure, see some eye sockets, see the cheekbones, see the jaw. So.
Well, something to note about the video here is that I deviated from the original design and I was exploring like something completely different, which I did not like. I save always iterations. Every time that I work on the project, pretty much every day, I save a new version of it. And I think here that even though I was kind of getting some progress, I ended up going to the day before because I didn't like where the design was going to.
He was getting a bit aggressive here, from what I can see.
Kind of looks like Jafar.
Yeah. It's like around those cheekbones and stuff. It's cool though, and like I think it's all part of the process, especially if you're just sort of jamming, which is kind of what you're doing here.
Yeah.
Just trying things out. You still learn.
Yeah.
This is not for production. This is like there's no deadline on this, so
no.
So it's fine for you just to have a bit of a play around, and that's probably what a lot of younger or less experienced sculptors kind of do anyway, just naturally, is just mess around and try things out. It is good to have a target in mind ultimately.
Yeah.
like work towards something. But if you're aware that you're trying things out, then that's fine. I think it's a good part of the development. Just make sure you're saving different iterations so you can see what you've done. And like you said, you went back a day pretty much. Was that right?
Yeah. Like I killed all the progress that I made that day because I don't think it was going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I think that also was related to looking at my references. I was looking a lot at the Palpatine design of Darren E. Marshall.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of like the aggressiveness came through.
Yeah, the Palpatine cheekbones are super aggressive.
Yeah.
And like there's quite a lot of like droop through the jaw and where the teeth would be, so that like sag of the skin and fat around the cheeks. So yeah. I can see that now that you've said that. Yeah, absolutely. It's got that look.
A couple things also is the eyebrows. I think David Bowie has a really cool shape of eyebrows, like between the upper lid and the brow.
Yeah.
Makes like this cool triangle shape. So I wanted to get that, but it was also getting too angry looking.
Yeah.
And the distance between the nose and the top lid as well is quite long. Because that is the thing that makes someone look older, because the skin sags. You can see that on David Bowie at that age. The older you get, the more you will see it in general. But I think that made it look less appealing ultimately. I kind of get rid of that later.
Yeah, I think it's something we might have talked about during the process. I was giving you some feedback, as much as you cared to take. Sometimes I just look at it and be like, I think this is a bit off. Actually, going back to the eyebrows and the facial hair that you were putting on there, something that you and I talked about when I was doing the self-portrait recently, is it's so hard to get likeness without the hair on the face.
Yeah.
And you can see here you've blocked in the hairline now, and I think having the hairline in and having even just the brows really, really helps see what a character looks like. It influences the overall appearance of a character so much.
Yeah, I find that it's key to have the pupils, the iris of the eyes painted. I like to paint the brows if there is any facial hair as well. Without it, you might be already there, but you cannot see it.
Yeah.
So
you could end up making mistakes or going off character, trying to make it look more like the character by using the face rather than... Like, it's like, everyone knows this, like, especially if you're like me and you've got shorter hair, it can go a lot of different ways when you wake up in the morning. And if you're having a bad hair day, you look at yourself and you're like, man, I look like crap today. But if you're having a great hair day, you're like, yeah, I'm killing it. So it makes a huge difference just to the way you appear, is just how your hair is falling.
Yeah.
It changes the overall silhouette of your head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's important to note that this is a temporary mesh, this is a temporary eyebrow. I'm gonna replace all this, I'm gonna make that brows later, and in a different software actually, the hair as well. I just wanna have it there, blocked in to help me.
Yeah, it's also landmarks. So you can see the top of where the eyebrows finish and the start of where the hairline starts. So, and how it affects the face silhouette. So, yeah.
Yeah, at this point the features are much nicer looking. I still don't like the proportions. I will change that, though I'm not gonna do it in Nomad. You can do it in Nomad, but it's gonna be more complicated. I really try to push to stay as much as possible in Nomad, because I know that you guys watch these videos because I do Nomad, but ultimately I rarely use only Nomad.
Yeah. And that's important to note. Like, in production, most artists aren't going to stick to one software to do everything, because there's just some software just does it better, and does it better for you. It really just comes down to the individual. But I think in production in general, most people switch between 1 to 2 to 3 different things depending on what they're doing and what part they're doing. If you're doing like sculpting, and you are in production, you might stay in ZBrush for a lot of it. But for Retopo, you might end up switching to like 3D Code or Maya or even Blender. It just depends what you like better for it. I don't really like ZBrush for Retopology at all.
No. I mean, depends what you're going for. If you are going for Retopology for animation, ZBrush is not what you want.
No.
If you're just presenting a concept sculpt, so the topology doesn't really matter, the ZBrush remesh is pretty good.
Even the manual Retopology workflow in ZBrush I don't really like.
No, it's horrible.
Yeah, so like I'd prefer 3D Code. For me, 3D Code I really like. And you've used Maya and
Maya gets really slow.
Yeah, Maya does get very slow. Blender you've used a bit as well?
Yeah, I just find 3D code much faster.
Yeah, I think the tool is like surprisingly good. I don't know. It feels like not many people use it, but yeah, it really feels like 3D Code's like a really good tool for retopology.
Yeah, so far is my favorite. Sometimes I've done it in Blender. Like I've really tried to do it in Blender, and it's fine. But I'm just way faster at working on 3D Code.
Yeah.
We haven't really reached that part. At this point, I'm polishing, doing my last polishes, and I'm changing the matte caps because I just got too used to the same lighting scenario. Hey y'all, just as usual, a quick pause because I want to acknowledge all our amazing patrons that make these videos possible. Thank you so much. For this video, you guys are gonna be able to access this time lapse at a much slower pace, so you can appreciate every step with way more detail. If you want to gain access to this video and a growing library of 3D assets, have a look at patreon.com/smallrobotstudio. Alrighty, back to the video. Well, yeah, now we're in Blender.
Yeah, so what's happening now?
What is happening now? I am gonna create the hair, that's right. I find it very easy to create a hair by extruding curve profiles. So I'm creating one shape, then I am with another curve, I am making it a long thing. You can do something like this in Nomad with a tube tool, but it's always gonna be a cylinder. You can sort of trick it to be a squash cylinder, but you can see here that I have suggested different types of strands.
Yeah.
It's a way more sophisticated tool than one Nomad gives you. You would have to do all this by hand, so it's much faster to do it here in Blender.
Yes, and sometimes fast is good. Not always.
Not always, yeah.
But like, you know, when you want to get stuff done, you want to get it done.
Yeah.
Not that there was a deadline, but you use the workflows that you know as well. That's the other thing.
Yeah, and this works for a very stylized style.
Yeah.
Yeah, like everything is very graphic, everything is very angular, so I wanted to have these graphic shapes as well on the hair. I'm using that hair block out to know what's the volume that I'm gonna cover. At that point I didn't know if I was gonna keep it or not. I just wanted to make sure that I had at least the front, which is very characteristic of that Bowie hairstyle.
Yeah, this is a very 90s hairstyle as well.
Yeah.
He even has blonde tips, I think, doesn't he?
Yeah, the blonde tips, yeah, they're awesome.
So it's like very 90s, and yeah, you want to have that real defined sort of spikiness on top, and then he just goes to a fade, I think, on the side.
Yeah, it's a fade. I had no idea how to do the fade at this point.
Yeah, work in progress. And you got some low poly workflow happening here for the earrings.
Yeah, exactly. This is box modeling, which I quite like in Blender. I've done quite a bit in Maya. It's kind of dumb, honestly.
Yeah, to be honest, like Blender, I think kills Maya in terms of modeling, in terms of box modeling.
Box modeling, yeah.
I think it's because it hits a good combination of what ZBrush does with its Z modeler, and what Maya does with its traditional box modeling in actual 3D.
The control that you have for each point.
Yeah, which you don't get in ZBrush because ZBrush is 2.5D. So you can't actually go inside of a mesh. You can only ever see it from the outside.
Yeah, and Nomad has no box modeling at all.
Yeah, which, I mean, hopefully they get to that at some point because it would make it, like, pretty powerful.
Yeah, there's things that are just much better to do. Everything that's, like, quite inorganic, everything that's, like, I guess, quite boxy, hard surface is much better to do like that.
Yeah, you really need the control over edges and individual faces and individual face extrusion. And if you're trying to get to low poly, you need to be able to define topology with things like edge loops, and actually be able to see smooth mesh previews. Because if it's going into production, you can't be chucking in, million poly models to animate. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So this wasn't obviously animated in the end, though we might do something fun with it. We've been talking about something. We'll look forward to that in the future. But we'll see how we go for time. But yeah, so still working on the hair.
Yeah, for now I just wanted to get it finished. We're kind of saying like it was kind of like an open deadline because there was a lot of experimentation, though at the same time it's good to have a deadline, otherwise you never finish a project.
Yes, yeah, it's like all art. Art is never finished; it's only abandoned.
Yeah, everyone has a bunch of projects that they started, but they just go to the graveyard of unfinished projects.
Yeah, the moral of the story is you can work on something forever, but at some point you have to decide when the finish is and how finished it is going to be.
There's plenty of things about this project that I would like to go back and polish because I don't like them. But because I committed to a deadline, it just gets as good as it gets in that time. And you have to accept that because otherwise you fall in the trap of like, I'm going to go back and fix it, I'm going to go back and refine it, and you're never going to finish. It gets better on your next project.
Yeah, like you can only really squeeze so much juice out of one project, and then that's just it. Really, like you're going to stop learning. You really need to keep creating new projects and creating new objectives in your art. Otherwise, you'll just stagnate.
Yeah. Whatever you learn from here, you're gonna take it from the next project, but your next project is not gonna be better if you don't finish stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're getting in there with the hair now, like quite a bit of the detail. You're just copying the strands and then just adjusting them?
Yeah, copying the strands. I have like 3 different, I think I got to 5 different shapes for the strands. There were some that were chunkier, like fatter start, so they would cover more space, but those are the inside ones, and the outside ones are slightly more intricate, but they're flatter.
Yeah.
I do spend quite a bit on the front because that is the most characteristic area.
Yeah, and generally, like I've done some work in groom recently, and I'm definitely not a groom artist, and the grooming style that I was using was much different, but the groom is, like we said earlier, such a big part of the overall silhouette. So you need to really be looking at it from a silhouette point of view, not just the individual strands.
Yeah.
And so what are you doing here in Photoshop?
Here I got to a point in which I did not like the proportions, and I realized that it was because all the distribution was very even. If you divide it by lines, the distances were the same.
Right.
And this is a faux pas when you're designing.
Yes.
So I went into Photoshop to experiment how I could move the proportions to make it more appealing, and after I solved that in Photoshop, I went into ZBrush. I did a fast retopology with the Z Remesh tool that would make it easier for me to just separate things and just adjust by masking, gizmo, fading, and smoothing without losing what I had already done. And I did it on ZBrush because I knew that it was going to be less destructive than if I tried to do it in Nomad.
So why is it less destructive than Nomad? What does Nomad do differently for that workflow?
You don't have as many fall-off options.
Okay.
When you move something, everything that is selected just moves along with it.
Okay.
When you have fall-off, the things that are closer to your gizmo will move, but the farther they are, the less intense that move is going to be.
Sure.
And after there was a bit of extra refining, final fixes, because I have made some major changes. And here I'm working with a mesh that was, I made it quite low poly, and then I made subdivisions.
Yeah, and this is something that, like how I generally recommend people work, particularly when they're newer modelers, is that you should work low to high. But having a low poly version just makes it easier to move your major features around. And you should be making your large form decisions before getting in and making and doing details. Every single student I ever teach just always is focused on, oh yeah, cool, so I've spent 5 minutes making a head, now I'm going to do some wrinkles. It's like, no.
Yep, no. Like, see, this is how far along I am, and I just merged the eyelids with the rest of the face.
Yeah.
They were separated because I wanted to have control.
Yeah, be able to move them around, change the overall forms. Look at how much time earlier in the video you spent looking at the overall large forms. And obviously this is fairly stylized, so there's not going to be lots of intricate detail, but there is still the trap of doing things like the wrinkles around where the eyes squint, the creases around the nose, things like that. People just love doing that. I don't know what it is, but they just want to do it.
Yeah, when they don't even get like the bone structure right. If you really want to make someone look alike, you need that bone structure, because how much my teeth protrude is gonna be key to make it look like myself or like anyone. We just don't look at the bones because they don't feel as exciting as the eyes. Everybody loves the eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you take anything away from this, is spend more time on your forms, on your overall structure, than spending time on the detail. The detail is not nearly as important. You never look at someone and look at the detail of their face. The first thing as a human being that you identify is the silhouette and the structure of a person. That's how you recognize people when you're like 50 meters away. It's their silhouette. So, and that just is halved as you get closer, obviously.
Yeah, also detail depends on where is the main interest of your sculpt. My sculpt is not about the body. You will see that the body that I created, the torso, is very simple. I'm not really defining that anatomy with,
There's no clavicle or anything like that.
It's just barely suggested because that is going to be covered by clothes. And I knew that the clothes were quite thick because he's wearing this knitted sweater that is, you can see it's very, very thick. So you're not going to see the clavicles at all.
Yeah, so why spend time on it?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's another trap.
yeah. I know it's exciting at least I find exciting to do anatomy studies.
Yeah. So you should be.
Yeah, but just add them do it when it matters.
Yeah, don't take your projects aren't your anatomy studies. Your anatomy studies are your anatomy studies. And they should be informing your projects. All right, so we're blocking in some more here now.
Yeah, I blocked in what is going to be the clothes, but I left them flat because those are going to be much easier to do somewhere else. I think I do them later in Blender.
Yeah.
And I'm experimenting with the hair. A new base for the hair because like the top is fine, but how am I going to do the fade? This was where I started to explore some fiber mesh.
Yeah, much to my chagrin.
I was gonna do it all polygonal, and then you told me you should do some micro mesh, and I understood fiber mesh.
Yeah.
So I went into this hair simulation thing that ZBrush has, trying to figure out how to maybe replace it with a existing mesh, how to make it look good, but it doesn't really work with what I have on the top.
It doesn't work with the style.
No, this is...
Actually, this is an interesting thing. Between Clone Wars and then the sequel to Clone Wars, I don't know, they did another series. It's a very similar thing. They changed the hair from being polygonal to being hair sims, and I absolutely hate it.
Oh, God.
Everything else is very stylized, but they've got this hair, and it's really weird, and I don't know why they went that way, because I really like the more graphic designs, and I think they work a lot better. They're a bit more consistent.
Yeah, it's way too much texture if you compare it to the rest of the style. It's claiming all the attention, it's shouting to look at it.
Yeah.
So that is bad style-wise, because I don't want people looking at the hair. If that was the objective, fine. Yeah. But that's not the objective here. His face is what matters.
Yeah. So, and you've also got not only just the competition of the hair having more detail on... It's the clash of the top of the head being polygonal, and then the sides of the head are all of a sudden fiber, or now they're getting into being a mesh.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe if I make it a flat plane, it could work, a similar shape as the top. And I think it's getting somewhere, but I was still not fully convinced. This was also, I have never used fiber mesh before, so it's all that learning curve.
Yeah, so this is kind of like quite a lot of exploration as well, and like we said earlier, this is kind of part of this project, was trying out a bunch of things and seeing what works well, and it needs to happen, and this is a good project to do it on. We've sort of discussed whether or not this would be a good project to take the hair out and actually do proper hair.
Yeah.
Which maybe we'll do. Just depends on how much time there is, which obviously there's never enough time.
Never enough time, yeah. Life is too short.
So, yeah, we'll see how we go. Because I've got a little bit more experience than Groom, maybe I'll do a Groom on it.
Yeah,
but we'll see how we go.
Yeah, the thing is that I took on this challenge because I had done in the past this graphic hair. And I was reading Drawn to Life.
Which is Walt Stanfield?
Yeah, book.
Great book.
Yeah, awesome book. He was a Disney animator. And he was talking about never doing the same thing the same way twice.
Yeah.
Like exploring different ways of doing something. And I had done in the past this polygonal hair in Blender. So I thought maybe I can do something different.
Yeah.
Maybe I can try to experiment something more interesting.
And like by not using it or by learning that you don't want to use it, that's just as valuable as learning that you do want to use it, because you've learned now, hey, this does work for this situation or it doesn't work. Knowing what is good and knowing what is not good is just as valuable as succeeding and just overall.
Yeah. I think by this point I realized that you did not say fiber mesh, you said micro mesh.
This is when I was like, why are you doing fiber mesh? So you're going and you're adding some micro mesh. And how does micro mesh work?
It takes each polygon and replaces it with an existing mesh.
Yep.
So I have these squares, these quads, and each quad is going to be replaced by whichever shape I want. And at this point I had to retopologize to have control, because otherwise ZBrush was going to make a mess on those squares. We know that he has a fade, so I wanted the squares on the top to be bigger and to get slowly smaller. So all of these are shapes that are meshes that are separate, so I can have control on the topology.
And this is what we were talking about earlier. This is 3D Coat, in case you haven't seen it. And this is retopology of those individual elements of the hair.
Yeah.
So you've got larger polygons going up towards the top of the head, smaller ones going towards the bottom, and you just segregated those different parts of the mesh during this process.
Yep, exactly.
Yep. And then what happens here is you just export these meshes back out to ZBrush.
Yep. You can take these meshes anywhere. You can bring them back to Nomad, you can take them to Blender, ZBrush. All these programs are like this formats that are compatible with each other.
Yeah, it's all just very standardized file formats, so everything reads everything else, so they can play together.
Yeah, and here I was exploring which was the specific shape of the hair. I thought this has potential, but still was not working.
Yeah.
Until I created this specific hair shape. There's like triangle that resembles a triangle that I did before for the bigger strands on the top.
Yeah.
And this is where I was finally like, yes, I am getting somewhere, I'm gonna commit to this.
Yeah.
I was quite tired at this point, to be honest.
I think you spent like a whole weekend messing around with this.
Just with hair.
Yeah, with hair, which...
Now, this is not full time.
Yeah, no.
No, this is like, aside from our day job, I come back.
And then also freelance.
Yeah, also freelance, and then I have a couple hours a day, which I would play with this. Here I'm doing the teeth with Z-Modeler and ZBrush.
Yep.
I didn't want to go back to Blender.
No.
I could have done it, but it was like, I'm just gonna do it here.
Yeah, Z-Modeler is powerful enough to do those basic shapes. You've got some UVs happening.
Yeah.
Why UVs?
Because I want to texture it later and I'm gonna decimate.
Right.
I'm gonna turn everything into triangles, so if I didn't do it now, I would have to go back and do it again later.
Yep.
I think I'm finally posing.
Yeah, so you're going in, you're masking off, and you're using large move brush to move everything around.
Yes, that's right. A little bit of gizmo and fall off as well that we talked about before.
And eye positioning. Eye positioning is always very hard to do because it's so easy to make your character look derpy if you've got your eyes not quite looking right. And it's like if you've never moved eyes around before you try it, you'll probably discover this. I mean, it happened to me recently. I had posed something and one of my eyes wasn't quite aligned correctly, and I was like, why is this not right? And I was like, oh, one of my eyes is looking slightly down. It does take a bit of practice. You definitely want to be looking at reference for how much eyes should be rotated, particularly when you're looking hard to one side. It's easy to just put both eyes all the way to the side of the socket, which is not really what happens.
I think that with designs, I tend to do the opposite. Instead of having the derpy eyes looking at different directions, I tend to be too cross-eyed.
Too cross-eyed, yeah.
Because I like cross-eyed cats, and I find that cute, and I tend to exaggerate that on my characters.
Yeah, and that's fine, because that's a style thing sometimes. It's just worth knowing what you have a tendency to do.
Yeah, but I don't think that was worth it here, because this is not meant to be a cutesy project. It's Mr. David Bowie.
Yeah. So we're back in Blender now. What are you doing here?
I am doing the clothes. I had made the shape on ZBrush, just a flat mesh, because I thought that was really easy to do on ZBrush.
So the advantage of being able to do it here is just that vertex control, and then just some more box modeling style stuff is a bit simpler.
Yeah, I forgot to do the brows and the facial hair before Retopologized. So same thing, I had the flat thing high topology on zebras, the shape that I wanted, which is easy to control there, and then this is just keeping the same shape but controlling the polygons there.
Yeah, retopology is a real art. It takes a long time to learn just to get the correct poly flow, especially if you're trying to find a nice low poly base mesh.
I love retopology, but I think that most people hate it.
Yeah, I hate it, which is good because then you can retopologize all my models.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to retopologize if you want to have your character animated. That's one of the main reasons. And if you're wanting to use smooth subdivisions, and many other reasons, but the main one will be animation and rigging. If you've got a 150,000, 200,000, 1 million poly mesh triangles, it's not going to deform properly.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like we are doing all of these processes, we use all of these softwares because we are professionals. We are going for animation projects. Our projects are not just it's done and that's it.
Yeah.
So they have some other purpose. If you're not sure if you need to do retopology, you need to know what's the real output.
Yeah, if you just want to present a sculpt in high poly and it's not meant to go into production, then there's no reason to retopologize.
Yeah, sometimes there is concept art stages in which you just want to visualize how it looks like on 3D, but it's not ready yet. That's going to be a stage done later.
Absolutely. All right, well, that's pretty much the whole thing, I believe.
Yeah, we reached the end of it.
So, overall, what are your impressions of your sculpt? What would you change if you were to do it again?
I still don't like the stylization. I still don't like the face, but I think that's a problem that I had. Like every so often I do a portrait or some project with David Bowie, but I think that I respect him so much that I feel like what I do is never good enough to represent him. But I just always stop at some point.
Yeah. For me, if I was going to go in and do it, I think if you give me the base mesh and I rig it, I would actually change the way the face is expressed a little bit. I just think you get closer to the expression that you're working from, maybe a little bit softer. He's got more of a suave look in the photo that you were referencing, and I want to hit that a little bit more. It's between the eyebrows and the overbite of the lips.
Yeah, I don't think the bite looks very convincing.
Yeah, just a little bit in the eyebrows as well. It's a tough, subtle facial expression to get right.
Yeah, I went subtle because I thought that was easier, but
It's
subtle often is not.
No, subtle is not. Subtle animation, subtle posing and those sorts of things is not the easy thing. You always start with exaggeration and work your way back from there.
Yeah, that is correct.
I think that pretty much wraps it up for now. There's a bunch of things that Érika did in this, which you can find tutorials for that we've already got on the channel, so like Retopology and Blender and just general sculpting and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, face sculpting, head sculpting, I have a whole 3-hour course about it in which I talk about this anatomy bits that we were talking about that were so important.
Yeah, so we'll leave some links in the description for those. If you've made it to this part of the video, congratulations. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you for listening. If you have questions about the process or things that are not in past videos that you would like us to make a tutorial about, feel free to let us know in the comments.
Yep, I think that's a good idea.
Yay!
Cool, well that's it for now.
Thank you guys.
Catch you later.
That's it for this tutorial. If you find it useful, make sure that you leave a like so other people can find it. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, as we are bringing out CG and illustration tutorials every week. Become a patron and access tutorial assets, bonus content, a private Discord, and more by clicking in the link below.